Philip Stoten. Welcome to episode 3 of Made in Europe. Today I am joined by Otto Pukk, Sven Merkel and Weiss. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. What I'd like to do just to get started is to ask Otto and Sven to introduce themselves and their companies so we can get to know them a little bit, and then we'll start to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities facing the European industry at the moment. Otto, perhaps you can go first from your office in outer space.
Yes, thank you very much, Philip, and thank you for having me here on the show. INCAP, we are an EMS company, and we are a Finnish company. We are listed on the Finnish Nasdaq. Slightly under 300 million in market cap. Currently, we have factories in Estonia, in UK, in Slovakia, and in India. In India, we have even 2 factories, building our third one currently there, and we have a sourcing office in Hong Kong currently. And basically, we build electronics and do that in all our units, and offer, of course, a lot of different services around the manufacturing, as well as I guess most companies in the EMS business today is doing. So that's very brief about INCAP.
Yeah, and Otto, with your mix from in the various different countries, what percentage of your business is in India, and what percentage is in Europe?
Yeah, we don't normally report that in our reporting, but as I said, currently INCAP has 5 factories, and I would say that each factory is roughly the same size. But of course, India having 2 of them, of course, makes them the share of India a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Okay. And Sven, tell me a bit about yourself and tell me a bit about SERO.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Thanks, first of all, for having me on your show. I'm a great fan. My name is Sven Merkel. I'm a bit older than 50s. I started here at SERO 2.5 years ago. I'm one of the, at that time, 2 managing directors with my colleague Bernd Welzel, who is an automotive expert. I'm more the finance guy. I'm also having more the position here. We're both MDs, but I'm the CFO. Bernd is the CEO. My focus was always on the financial reporting. We are private equity owned, so it was before a family business. Now it's private equity owned. A lot of things change when you have a private equity as an owner, in reporting, and because of course also the financing. Financing is done very often through banks, and not all equity of the private equity. So there's a lot of reporting needed, and all these, the 3 shareholders, banks, and the relation to employees, you have to adapt everything. It's a new ball game. So that's what we've been doing the last 2 years. The customer portfolio we had and have is solid. It's a bit too much automotive at that time when we came, and we changed more and more to we bought another company. I don't know if we come later, I'm sure we come to it later, and to get our mix more right for the market and the expectation of everybody and the direction of the strategy we wanted to go to. So then we also got a new third managing director, Jan-Frederik Calais, who's the 3rd guy in the team now of the new bigger SERO group. So we're 3 trying to manage this thing, and besides having a lot of work, trying to have a lot of fun.
Okay, and Sven, just to give me an idea of scale, I don't know what you report publicly. Do you report your revenue publicly?
No, you can look it up 1 year later, but it's roughly jointly we're trying to aim at, if you put 2 together, we are above 150 million euros, and we are more or less equal, the 2 companies now, and we're looking for something else still to broaden. You get a bit wider, and also maybe another continent. So for the time being, it's 150 million, more or less even the companies, 70, 80, something like that.
Yeah, and there's a critical mass that's needed, isn't there, to get to a certain point of influence in the market. But I think what's interesting about being private equity owned is when you do have a disruption like the pandemic come along and it does impact negatively on, for example, the automotive sector, at least there's the fuel there to go out and acquire something else and take some corrective action, which under normal circumstances might not be available.
Yeah, you nailed it exactly. There, DBAG, or the private equity company who owns us, they would just say, "No, this is the chance. Go out and hunt." And besides fighting the issue with Corona, we had a lot more homework to do. So they kept us busy. But of course, they were also very much involved. They're experts in doing this, and we had good teams to work in, and we looked more or less at 10 potential customers, and not customers, but stakes, companies to look at, and it was a really interesting time. But thanks, we had the help of them focusing on what we wanted, so we defined it. They helped us to focus on, and then we've the due diligence, the discussions, and then you go, oh, maybe it's not the right one. And in the end, it's all about people. I mean, we're in the electronic business, and we do a little bit on PCBs, but it's about people.
Yeah, absolutely, and getting those people to come together. And we'll talk a little bit in a short while about the different geographies and why you selected the specific geographies. But I wanted to bring Dieter in here. I'm not going to ask Dieter to introduce himself because I don't think there are many people watching that don't know who Dieter Weiss is. But Dieter, you wrote to me before the show, and it actually prompted me to write an article in the lead in EMS Now yesterday regarding the various different disruptions that have been in the industry. And we often talk about the pandemic as a crisis, and we talk about the component shortage as a crisis, but perhaps the real crisis facing the industry and actually facing everybody, even outside of the industry, is climate change. And that's definitely something you wanted to bring up today. What's your view on that, and what should we be doing as an industry?
Yeah, good morning, everybody together. I think we have to change our strategy of working. I am in present over here in France at a big show, and I happen to see a lot of changes in Lyon, and it's not only in Lyon, it's in all big French cities. They applied 30 kilometers an hour on all roads. In addition, they changed the roads from 2 lines to 1 line. Most of them are one-way roads now, with broad bicycle ways on both sides. And you see many more people riding a bicycles and going by car nowadays, which at this moment is not a problem because the weather is good over here. I wonder how it's going to look when the weather turns bad, but at least it tells us something. It tells us that people are rethinking. And the same goes for the vaccination over here. Either you have the digital vaccination passport on your phone, or you will not be allowed in any restaurant or bar, not even sitting outside. So no vaccination, no food, no drink, period. Yeah. In Germany, we are so stupid to discuss this endlessly, talking about freedom. And in the US, we are talking about First and Second Amendment and all of this crap. And I can tell you, there is only one way we need to change. And that goes for the environment as well. Yeah. We need to rethink the environment, and we will have to rethink our sourcing strategies. Now, if we look at China, China is not a low-cost country anymore, and it hasn't been for the last couple of years. It is a high technology country, and it is a serious competitor. Yeah? Let's say it that way. But if you look at the energy that is being used to get goods which are needed, for example, in Western Europe, from China to Western Europe, that is so much. And my clear point is those companies who are still sourcing PCBA or full electronic modules have to rethink and buy more local. And I can assure you, our labor costs in Eastern Europe are competitive to certain parts of China, especially the southern parts. And if you add now transportation, if you add insured carbon dioxide fees that will be applied, all of that will add up to the total cost, and then it makes no sense anymore to source in China, but to relocate. And we have so many good manufacturing facilities in Eastern Europe, and we actually today have two companies sitting here who both have a factory, for example, in Slovakia. Slovakia is the 8th biggest manufacturer for EMS products in Europe. They employ more than 6,000 people, and they generate more than 1.5 billion euros in revenues. And I think this should go up. Now, even Foxconn has a factory in Slovakia, which they took over from Sony in 2009, and they are manufacturing for Sony nowadays most of the TV sets which are needed in Europe. So Sony has understood that one should manufacture local.
Yeah. I think that, you know, when I was writing that piece yesterday, the thing that came out for me was that shorter supply chains are just a natural route to a more sustainable model. And I think there are a lot of dynamics that are pushing towards local sourcing. Otto, when you talk to your customers and they're looking at the European customers, they're looking to buy in Europe, are they driven by climate change and sustainability? Are they driven more by supply chain resilience and supply chain security? Or is there a realization that the cost of ownership is as economic in Europe as it is anywhere?
I guess it's a combination of all, but for sure, climate change and how to say, in general, to drive a more sustainable business is in focus, and not only by clients, but I think by all stakeholders. INCAP also, we have focused lately very much on our ESG reporting, and we have joined the UN this global compact initiative, and so with many companies in our industry as well. So I think that it's not only how to say performance and earning money. It's focus is on how you do it, and that you do it in a sustainable way, for sure, when it comes to environment, but also when it comes to corruption and fighting how to say inequality and so in general on a global scale. So for sure. But as you mentioned, that I think there's a lot of myths in the EMS business, and people very much think that Asia is always cheaper, but it's not cheaper. Here in Europe, we can provide a very attractive base for manufacturing for many companies, and especially if proximity and so is important for those customers. So it's there's a lot of prejudice and so on how the market looks like. But I normally take as an example that from our factory on the small island of Saaremaa in Estonia, we are exporting electronics to China, and that shows that the world is not as many people think it is.
Well, absolutely, and you're actually exporting products beyond Earth, so you're exporting into products to space as well. So there's a market that's even further away. Sven, are your customers concerned about the environmental element, and is the pressure from the consumer being driven down to you?
Well, we have a lot of demonstrations, Friday for Futures and so on, but nobody really thinks about us. I think what will definitely happen is the laws will change, and there will be pressures on the OEMs, on the environmental issues. The other thing is definitely no child labor and all these things. There's a law coming out, I think in January next year, and they will just push it down to us, so we better get prepared. One thing I've noticed, we are all a bit older, you know, about 50 and so on. I think it's the young people who join the companies who push this. It's just more in their genes than it is with us. We talk about it and we hear it, but it's not for us. It was always, you know, price. I think that the more the younger generation push in, they will do the change in the company. So we have to initiate it, us gray-haired guys. And we have to definitely walk the talk. But I think the push will come from hopefully from our youngsters. And I see this more and more when people talk to me, but shouldn't we have solar panels on the roof? So yeah, you could think, because you know, for me, money, I can save. Okay, our roof is not strong enough. We cannot do this, for instance. Very bad, yeah. Can't we do things, change the absorption, you know, the heat from the ovens, use that to gain energy. Oh, we've done this. Boom, great. So people see we do this, but in interviews, people actually ask me already, because they know we work for automotive. What are you doing, and are you CO2 neutral? I had to look it up first. I'm kidding, but basically that question like this come, and it's only young people who ask this. So the pressure is there. It's not really the consumer, it's more the people who work, you want to try to find here to work for you. They have a choice. These days they have a choice. And same salary, but maybe the image of the company not good. Okay, boom, I go somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Sven. It does become an HR issue and a recruitment issue as well. You have to be the company that those people want to work for, and having that stakeholder capital approach where you're thinking about the environment as well as the profitability of the business is important. But as you say, it takes a few gray hairs to be able to, you know, figure out that this strategy can actually do some good in terms of ESG and actually works for the business. And again, I come back to that idea that shorter supply chains just seem practical in terms of being able to be more carbon zero or closer to carbon zero, because you've got less air miles in there, but also seems to be very practical in terms of getting stuff done quickly, getting stuff done efficiently, being more resilient. Dieter, I wanted to ask you, when you originally talked about this topic, do you think the supply chain is adequately flexible? So, for example, if most European brands decide they want to produce their goods in Europe and supply them to European consumers, yes, that makes a lot of sense, but all the components that go into those devices, a lot of those aren't available in Europe. Do we have a problem there?
Well, yes, we definitely do have a problem over there. For too long, the European electronics industry didn't fight a trend. If we go back 30 years ago, and I'm switching to the US now, where Boston Consulting said, it's not a matter whether you move your production to China, it's just a matter how fast. That was the discussion of the 90s. Everybody just wanted to move to China, source in China. I remember on the PCB side, it was Siemens and Bosch pushing heavily. And those days I had been working in the PCB industry, and we were always beaten up by those big OEM companies with new revisions of their specifications, being tighter and tighter and tighter every day. And when we said, well, you want all of this, it costs more. They said, no way. So it was just increasing the technical demand without being willing to pay for it. And then all of a sudden, the board of directors made this decision: we don't care anymore. We just source in China as of tomorrow. And they switched. And the first PCBs coming back to Germany, they had to hire a third party to do 100% visual inspection, because otherwise the products were not good for manufacturing. So I know this has changed by now. The quality has tremendously improved. But we have done a big fault in the 90s. The PCB industry in Europe, which those days consisted of more than 2,000 factories, just allowed it to happen. There was no one there fighting it strongly, having sufficient numbers. And I see this as one of my jobs. Give the EMS industry now those numbers, those market numbers that are necessary to make the right decisions. And I can tell you, if the Chinese gonna attack, I can only recommend, and we do have that, EMS companies open up a factory in China. If you look today at the top 20 European EMS companies, out of those top 20, 14 have a factory in China. And the majority of what is manufactured over there stays in China. Yeah. But China, if a customer heavily pushes for whatever reason, thinking he might get products cheaper, then the big global European players can offer this alternative as well, and Otto can offer it from India. So so if we look at, in regards to the components, yes, we do have a major problem, because a lot of components used to be manufactured in the past in Europe, and now the majority of it has to be sourced in the Far East. And to be honest, I don't know, but I think it might be too late to change all of that. Yeah, to reverse that. Certainly with the PCB industry, I think it is too late. And I think that ship sailed a long time ago. And you're right, it probably sailed in the 90s and it was a big trend. And those are one of those products that are easy to ship around the world. I think with EMS, things are a little bit different. With, you know, semiconductors, we're in the middle of a semiconductor shortage issue, and new factories are being built everywhere, but that will take quite a lot of time. I absolutely agree that Europe, and particularly Eastern Europe, is an economic place to manufacture. And I want to switch gear and just explore some of those regions. Otto, if we start with you, you have several geographies in Europe. Talk me through those and talk me through the relative merits of the different locations that you manufacture in, and why it's a conscious decision to manufacture in those locations.
You know, in Europe, we have 3 locations in INCAP. So we have a factory in Estonia, we have one in Slovakia, and also a factory in UK. And UK, of course, being somewhere the 5th to 6th economy in the world, of course, that perhaps talks for itself, where we have a presence in UK. But otherwise, if you look at Slovakia, for example, I have a great proximity to the German market. And the German market, of course, being the biggest EMS market in Estonia, is a very attractive market. The Slovakian unit offers, they have the proximity, but offer, of course, some benefits when it comes to cost and so compared to manufacturing in Germany. And the same logic applies actually to our Estonian unit when it comes to Northern Europe, when it comes to Finland and Sweden, and so that you have a proximity to those markets, but you have a little bit different cost structure than they have. The cost structure, I just would want to emphasize there as well. So it's not how to say a radical difference when it comes to labor and so. But if you look in general, in those countries, there are much later investments and so made in general than perhaps on the home markets. So what we can offer is a much more modern setup. And I think that it's the efficiency foremost that drives the cost level down. But that's the logic for INCAP's basements, that we are the proximity to Northern Europe markets from Estonia and Central Europe markets from Slovakia, and of course being on the big UK market itself is perhaps helpful. So,
yeah, and Otto, when you chose to open the facilities in India or acquire the facilities, you can give me a bit of background on how that came about. But was that a conscious decision to sit somewhere between Europe and Asia, have maybe more access to some of the supply chain in Asia? Or was it mainly around low-cost labor? What was the decision making in developing that footprint?
No, foremost, I would say that if you want to have a presence and how to say and offer services to the Indian market, then a local presence is needed. So INCAP's current, and we're building the third factory as well in that will be a little bit of a mix. But currently we have two factories in India, one for the domestic market and one for export. And I think that goes also very much for now from India. You can export into China fairly okay as well. But the key is that if you want to have a share of these big markets, you need to have a local presence. So that is the logic behind India. India, of course, is the world's biggest democracy in that sense, and perhaps in that sense, attractive country to do business in compared to many other more totalitarian Asian states, and so there is a lot of benefits when it comes to India in general.
Yeah, no, India is really interesting, and I think it's always been one of those regions for EMS that's always felt like it's had a big future and hasn't quite got there yet. And you refer to it as the world's largest democracy, and that's very much a positive, but it's also the world's largest bureaucracy. And I know that's been challenging in the past, but I did a show yesterday with Eric Miskell talking to Indian contract manufacturers, which I think was published today on EMS Now. And it was fascinating. They're really moving forward, and there are some good government grants and great support.
Yeah, no, I think the key there, and if you look in INCAP, we operate all our units with a decentralized model with strong local teams and drive the whole business from each unit directly. And that goes for our Indian team as well. We're a strong local team in India. And I think that is the key to drive international business, is to not try to steer it from one point in the world, but to have strong teams and people that understand the nuances when it comes to culture and nuances when it comes to doing business in the region or in that country. And we have been very successful with that in INCAP. And I would say not only in India, but in all our units.
Yeah, and it gives you an understanding of the local market as well, and you know how to sell into it, how to service that market. Sven, talk me through your footprint and the logic to the different geographies there.
Okay, we've been looking at two areas: Eastern Europe and Mexico, US market, because one of our customers we're producing for a lot for the Americas market. It's a big part of our revenue. But also, of course, we have customers in Eastern Europe as well. And so we were looking actually at Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and going there. We didn't go further, really, Romania and so on, because basically more there's also language issues, which we could see. Very difficult for us here already. We are not all in Germany. English is not so maybe strong as it is, like for instance in Holland or so. Everybody speaks English and Dutch and whatever. So that we had to take care of a bit of this, but the main factor was really manufacturing costs, labor costs, and Slovakia is extremely interesting concerning labor costs. They're extremely good what concerns automotive, the know-how, the knowledge, the people. Of course, there's also fear because there are so many people that the prices, the inflation of labor cost goes up, that is definitely always a risk in these countries. The more they are advanced, also the more people also want to have a share of the revenue, basically. But they have one thing: they can get outside workers from Ukraine and Vietnam, so they have certain things in these countries, advantages to get outside labor in really quickly. And so we could still see there's a source of labor force at a high standard available, plus language. And then the company itself we looked at is complementary to what we do. So here in Rohrbach in Germany, we do THD, but also SMT. We have 8 SMT lines. We do highly automated, of course, because of a bit higher labor costs here. We try to be very good with processes and streamlining the companies. And really, every year we have pressure, of course, from our customers to improve and reduce the cost. And on the other hand, we have in Slovakia the opportunity to do more THT work, which is more and more used especially in the industry sector, which we're trying to focus more on. So it's really a thing which falls together, complementary, and honestly, we're learning from each other. It's not like, oh, we know everything. Not at all. Not at all. It's really, it goes two ways, and it has to go two ways. We have to take the better of both to excel and to even become stronger.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned there the importance of automation, particularly in the higher cost environments. And Otto mentioned that actually the key in any region is the operating efficiency of those factories. I'd ask all three of you, and I'll start with Dieter. How important is it for Europe as a whole, and I mean Eastern Europe as much as Western Europe, that they really embrace automation, digital transformation to take the businesses to the next level, to that next level of efficiency, that next level of cost efficiency and traceability and the highest possible quality, regardless of which part of Europe stuff's coming from? Do you think that's a key to success, Dieter?
Yes, I think it is very important, in specific for the Western European companies, to work on this higher degree of automation. I remember last year I visited a factory of a large EMS company with a factory in Germany and one in Poland. And they are working in the consumer electronics industry. And I was wondering how they could do this in a factory in Germany. And then I had a look on the factory floor, and there was a huge automation. You didn't see any people at all. And if such a manufacturing line is running super efficient with few people, for sure it can compete with their factory in Poland, where they manufactured in actual fact the product with lower technology and maybe smaller lot sizes. So yes, automation and digitization will be the key factors on the factory floor. And there is another simple reason to that, which was mentioned before. Getting labor is getting a problem. Getting good and qualified people is getting a problem. And I'm actually over here at the French exhibition at the stand of IPC. And we are today have the soldering competition. And yesterday we have been training young people from the university in regards to hand soldering. And all of these things are important and I highly appreciate that an association like IPC is taking the lead on doing educational activities in regards to making sure that we get qualified people for the future. So all of that is very important.
Yeah, I think that mix of skills and automation is fundamental. Otto, what's the digital transformation strategy of INCAP?
I used to say that when we discuss it internally, that if we're going to do world-class electronics, then we need world-class processes and technology to do it. And I think if you don't invest in your manufacturing infrastructure and in the processes in general, then you're only fooling yourself in that sense in the long run. So I think that of course digitalization and automation is something that all manufacturers have high up on their agenda. That said, the electronic industry in general, the big, how to say, revolutions, they were done, I would guess, some 10-15 years ago, and compared to many other industry segments where they're just getting started today, then I think most of us already run our business on a digital platform, and then we have automated and semi-automated production lines, and so where it's possible to do so. Of course, you can't automate everything. It's sometimes it's not cost efficient, and we need to understand that also, and that also drives a labor need. And I think that it's good that Dieter brought up, because it's also so that people believe that if we automate everything, then we only need a few engineers, and so, but it's not true. We still need skilled labor and labor on every category. The automatic lines are so smart today that you can basically put whoever to run it, but you need that person to find that person. I think that will be a challenge in Europe where we don't have very much growing populations in the most of the regions, and how to move forward with that.
Yeah, I think that whole labor challenge and how automation fits in with that is key. Sven, when you look at, for example, an acquisition, is it important that you both have the same vision and the same strategy with respect to digital transformation? And is your part of your integration making sure the software and the hardware is similar across the facilities?
It's a dream to have this, but not at the beginning. So we have different softwares, and we are not this huge group where you just throw 3 million at it and create a group and say, come on, you have 3 years. No. So for the time being, it's what I would call a part integration we're trying to achieve. We're trying to work together. We're trying to definitely have the front end when the customer approaches us. And that is actually key, coming back to what also Dieter says, to be faster or better than China. You have to be quick when you get a demand. You have to really be quick to the customer. You have to be able to transform what he wants into an offer, do samples. And there you have to be China. China can do this in 1 to 2 weeks already. And if we do this in 4 to 6 weeks, you might be 6 weeks on the boat. It ends up the same, but it's just still cheaper. So you have to cut out a lot on the front end to be faster with the customer, more flexible. And that's where we try to work together. So the customer, we can immediately show him, listen, maybe it's not the right place for Horbach because it's too much with manual work. We have a factory here in Slovakia. This and this will be the price they do it, but it comes from the group. So front end, that's what we first work on first. Digitalization, we try to have projects which we identify where we need new software for the efficiency on the machines and so on. Of course, we work together and we try to get an RFQ for both companies in place to get also a better price. Of course, we are trying to play our power on the market as well, even though it's a small power, but it's bigger than what we were as a standalone before. So we're trying to do what we can, but it's not a full integration. It is step by step, growing together, getting to know each other, work together on project. I have the first project that was great. We moved the project from here to Slovakia, and we had people come over from Slovakia. And so we could see how they work, and our people here could see how they work. And they've seen they're not here to steal your job. They're here, and it was really good somehow. That was my first integration. That was so key. Now we're moving this project. People from us go there and see how they work. They get new ideas. They bring it back. So this is the exchange. It's so vital, and you can do it too quick, make people upset. Then even the few you have, they still run away, because it is a tight market. So we're dealing with people. So we have to, it's very sensitive.
Yeah, and slowly. And you talk about labor shortages. Are there particular countries where you see, huge amounts or large amounts of skilled labor that are great opportunities? Are there new regions in Europe that we haven't explored yet, or we're not growing as aggressively in as we could? Dieter, are there countries where you look at and say, hey, that region is fantastic for EMS, there should be more EMS companies there?
Well, that is specifically in regards to labor, a question of the unemployment rates. If you, for example, look at the unemployment rates in Czechia and in Hungary, you will see that they have nearly no unemployment anymore. Mm-hmm. And still, once in a while, I read that some OEM is setting up in Hungary, and I always ask myself, what are they doing there? I remember a big automotive supplier going, I think it was to Lithuania a couple of years ago, a supplier for lighting products, which has just been sold to a French company. And they came into this market and they ruined the labor prices, because in order to get labor, they offered 30% more. Well, doing that is totally stupid, but probably they hadn't thought of this viewpoint in the past. The same goes for Czechia. I know a company which finally shut down their doors in Czechia because in 2018, Skoda was having a big strike. People wanted more money. They said Volkswagen was doing so good, they wanted to have their share of the profits, and they ended up with a two-digit labor increase. And as this EMS factory was sitting very close to Skoda, the employees said to the entrepreneur, well, you either pay us the same or we're going to go to Skoda. So it happened once. When it happened again in 2019, the entrepreneur had no other chance but to say, okay, I'm closing down over here. And he now set up a factory in Serbia. Mm-hmm. Now, we still have this problem that Serbia is no part of the European Union. Still, we see that more and more companies are setting up factories over there, even global one. IMI has a factory in Bulgaria where they're doing heavy automotive stuff. And they now set up a subsidiary supplying the Bulgarian factory in Serbia. And that is due to the fact that there is, as far as I know at the moment, I think more than 15% unemployment rate. Even Romania has a high unemployment rate, and there is a new kid on the block which is heavily pushing in Europe over here, and that is Moldavia. Moldavia, even so being a small country, they still have a unemployment rate which is too high, and they would love to have more companies come to Moldavia and invest there and set up an electronic factory over there. So yes, there are. But even if I look at Estonia, Estonia being a small country, I can assure you there's still space over there.
Yeah, and they're really smart people, and like I say, they've got the technology infrastructure. Otto, we hear about places like Moldavia, and we hear about places like Georgia. Any little gems that you're keeping your eye on?
INCAP, of course, we are also on the look for possible M&A targets, and even if we're growing very strongly organically currently and have been the past years. But no, I don't have any gems in that sense that we're looking more particularly on. In INCAP's M&A, if you look at our rationale, it's very simple that we want, of course, the company to be healthy. We don't want any turnaround cases on our hand, and so we want to acquire a healthy business. It should give some kind of perhaps geographic enlarging our geographical footprint. So in that case, it's all markets are interested, but it's more on the customer side where we are looking on that. The third is that it should fit our culture. And as I mentioned before, we're running our operations very independently and decentralized. And that means that we need to have people in the organization that can run the companies on site. So that's the three things we are looking at. But I think in Europe there is as Dieter mentioned, I think both Slovakia and Estonia is great markets for EMS. They have a strong industrial tradition, and I think that helps with the thinking. So it's not I would say shameful to work in the industry, and in the contrary, it's a pride in many of these countries compared to perhaps in some Western European cases where there is not. So I think there's plenty of interesting places in Europe still.
Yeah, plenty of development going on there. Would you agree, Sven? Lots of growth potential, particularly in the East.
Yeah, I would agree, especially labor, one thing, and still potential for getting THT and like Otto said, you do need everybody. So even though we maybe grow at the moment more, what we call maybe white collar or engineering part, we need maybe it's harder to get also people, but the machines are operated by humans, luckily still, and you need those guys, dedicated guys, and definitely, finding them here is difficult. Finding them maybe more in the East is still more possible. I agree. We yet still have to look at the other side of the ocean. Coming back to also what we mentioned before with the footprint and so on, and short delivery time. So we're looking for something maybe more over the Atlantic there, to be closer to the customer. But that's one other reason.
Yeah, no, we should talk about Mexico. I lived in Guadalajara for a while, so I'll fill you in on what's going on there. 100,000 people in one city working in the EMS industry. So that's a big center for manufacturing. I'm conscious of the time, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I just wanted to briefly touch on the kind of two major disruptions that we're going through at the moment, the back end of the pandemic, and of course the difficulty of semiconductor shortages. Otto, how are those two things impacting your business? And do you see the kind of pandemic thing coming to an end and the component shortages having a way out in the next 12 months?
Yeah, of course, the future will tell in that sense. But no, I think of course the pandemic and the shortages have impacted the INCAP as well, and we are monitoring this very closely. Pandemic, especially that even if we manage to steer ourselves through the different lockdowns, and so that we were subjected to very successfully, then of course. Still, we are looking at what is happening in the different countries we're operating, and if there is possibilities of further restrictions, and so that said, I think we have managed very well, and I'm not that worried about it in that sense. Material shortage, of course, is tricky. INCAP being an EMS company. Then we have a lot of different customers and a lot of different projects. So of course, some of these has been heavily impacted by the material shortages, but the overall pictures have looked very positive for INCAP as we're quite well balanced. I'm optimistic. I know there's a lot of activities on the market currently to increase the supply, and talking to our supply chains, and so I think we're starting to see some kind of light in the end of the tunnel here early next year and during the first quarter. So and even I would say that the picture have improved some already now towards the end of the year. So it's not we're absolutely not I would say haven't solved it yet, but it's getting brighter, and I think in general that's our perception.
Yeah, and Sven, do you share that optimism? At the end of the day, you mentioned earlier it's about people. it's about people and open communications that gets you through the crisis like the pandemic. And it's the same with the component shortage, isn't it? It's constant communication.
It's constant, and it's amazing how much our salespeople, our supply chain people are involved, even on our level, management director level, so much we're dragged in, pulled in into calls and issues being shouted at and so on. It's it's ridiculous already what is happening. What I see on this crisis, of course, bad. Looking at numbers, inventory goes up. It was on a higher level than 2018, where we had a similar thing. And now we're talking over 20% partially of inventory on your balance sheet. Not good for your working capital. You have to finance all this. And just one little component missing. You have your warehouse full of stuff that you cannot produce because there's one single thing missing. This is absolutely crazy. I wish I talked to Dieter last week, pass it on to your customer. It's not so easy. All these additional costs, partially, yes, you can negotiate. Partially, they see you're sitting in the same boat. Somehow the market just develops the wrong way, and we know it will go one day better, and hopefully it's exactly in 12 months. But there's a big issue. Not everybody is that smart and forward-looking. You suddenly higher labor costs, higher inventory. Luckily, hopefully, your receivables go up somehow. I mean, in the sense that you make revenue. It's not good for your working capital, but the guys want to get paid. You have big distributors. They just say, "Hey, you pay or you go in advance." I mean, It's really biting. It's biting the guys everywhere. But we get out of it, and we're smarter in 1 year's time, and we laugh about it, hopefully.
Yeah, I look forward to the day we can laugh about it. Dieter, I'm going to let you have the final word. Are you an optimist? Are you optimistic that we'll get through this bump and the European industry will come out of it better?
I'm not sure whether it'll come out better. I think companies making the right decisions will come out better. There will be some companies which will not survive, in specific those who are not strict enough to forward their increased cost structure over to the to prices to their customers. We have people talking about just adding the additional cost for sourcing the semiconductors to their customers. And in my opinion, that is absolutely stupid. Let's face it, we're sitting in the same boat, all of us. Yeah, and no matter whether we are EMS or whether we are OEM, we all pay the higher prices. So any buyer trying to argue with an EMS that he will not accept higher prices, or even being so stupid to threaten, well, if I don't get my old price, I'm going to go away to another EMS. Okay, let him do that. He will not get anything. Yeah, so we need to realize that. And people who are not making sure that they maintain their profit margin, they have no chance of surviving. And those will be the losers, and there will be losers in our industry, the latest by end of next year. So I can only ask you, think positive about it, think twice, make sure you get your prices which you need. And the message to all OEMs, there is brilliant sourcing possibilities over here in Europe. Take the chance. If you need help finding the right supplier, give me a call. I will help you to make sure you will get the EMS supplier over here in Europe that fits exactly your demand.
Yeah. Well, Dieter, I really appreciate that, and I think there's realism and optimism mixed in there. I personally am a very optimistic person, and I think the European market's got so much to offer. You're right. At the moment, relationships with OEMs are under pressure, and I think companies like Otto's, like Sven's, that have a very honest and open and collaborative partnership with their customers will do well. and those that don't will be completely challenged by this particular issue. But yeah, no, I think manufacturing in Europe is absolutely going in the right direction, and more brands want to have their products manufactured in Europe for the European market and understand that. So, and if that benefits the planet as well as the EMS is there, I think that's a great thing. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you today. Thanks for taking time out of your morning. You've got the rest of the day free now to go and source all those tricky components and get back to the grind. But thanks very much. Stay safe, and we'll chat again soon.